Hey, everybody, I'm Andy Weinberg, and welcome to episode 81 of the David Uosikkinen in the Pocket podcast.
Wide receiver.
What, are we going T.O.?
Well, why not? He's one of the best, right?
Yeah, well, I wasn't thinking T.O. in terms of 81, but since you brought up wide receiver. It's our first episode of the new year, first episode of 2021. Happy belated New Year, Dave.
Happy New Year to you, Andy.
And, of course, we're here at the Wildfire Radio Studios.
It's looking good, too, isn't it?
Yes, in Woodbury, New Jersey.
Yeah.
All kinds of new, there's a new video set up here, so constantly.
The technical ninja there, on our producer, Taylor, has got it going on. We have video, and we got this, and we're got protected with the little screen, so it's cool. Great job, Taylor.
Every time we come here, every other week, there's something new here.
Love
so
it.
Great job to Wildfire and Taylor. Thanks, as always, for them hosting us. And we have we're very excited to have the guest we have this week. His name is Sammy Merendino. He's a drummer, a programmer, a producer, percussionist, one of the best in the business. New York City based, has played with everybody or worked with everybody. Been with Cyndi Lauper for a long time. He's been in a couple Broadway musicals. So there's a ton to talk about with Sammy. I know he's a good friend of yours too, Dave.
Sam. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation with the great Sammy Merendino. Before we get to Sammy, I do want to thank our sponsors, our great friends at the School of Rock Main Line in Berwyn, Pennsylvania, taking young musicians and helping them feel like rock stars.
Yeah, what a job those guys do. Really wonderful program across the country, but I'm teaching at the one there in Berwyn. It's ran by Rick Allison and Dave Marsh. They do a wonderful job. They protect their students. They were very aware of what was going on over the last year with COVID, so they set it up. At first, we were doing a lot. They still do some online lessons, but they have it protected with screens, and it's a great program. If you go and if you heard about School of Rock in Berwyn on the podcast, please let Dave and Rick know, and they'll give you a discount, and you can join up, and your kid will be in a great environment for learning, and artistically, it's terrific.
It's super. They have great teachers over there.
Fun.
Great program. I mean, we've had some School of Rock alum actually on the podcast.
Yes,
so
great players.
Very cool. And you can call them at 610-647-2900 or check them out on the web, schoolofrock.com. And again, look up the one in School of Rock Main Line in Berwyn, Pennsylvania. Also want to thank our friend Eric Metz at Croker Percussion. That's crokerpercussion.com, CROAKER percussion.com. They're dedicated to creating quality handcrafted percussion instruments with superior sound quality and unmatched craftsmanship. Again, crokerpercussion.com.
I love that drum set. I do. It's really cool. It's so different, and it has a great look, great feel. Tell Eric you heard about the Kroger Percussion. I'm sure he'll probably do something for you if you do from the podcast. So, but check out that kit because it's very it's fun and it sounds great.
It's great stuff. You can see it
shakers too. They got great. I'll talk to. They use those shakers and that are just sound amazing. I think it's like a titanium or whatever it's made out of, and it sounds amazing.
Yes, and it looks great too. Check. You can see it on the website or call Eric at 215-669-8588. All right, Dave. Well, speaking of percussion and drumming, we have one of the best in the business on the line with us from his home studio in New York City. His name is Sammy Merendino. Hi, Sammy.
Hey, how you doing, man? Thanks for having me on the show.
He's one of the coolest people I know, Sam. You see Sam? We'd run into Sam. Hi, Sam. How are you, bud? We'd see.
Good,
I would see Sam at NAMM, and you can't miss Sam because he's what? Sam, you 6'4"? You're about 6'4".
No, 6'2".
6'2". You look about 6'4". You know what? He shaved his head. I don't know if you're bald, but he shaved it. He's got a great look. He just stands out, and he's so slick and cool. But he's so humble and great, and it's so great to have you on the podcast, Sammy, because I've been thinking about calling you for the longest time to get you on the chat because, we both love great food, beautiful women.
Absolutely.
The only thing I'm a terrible – I know you play golf, and I stink at golf, and it's something I'd like to maybe try to get into. They actually started calling me Divot after. But I know you've invited me. You asked me that one time, do you play golf? And Sam, when he was on tour, you carry your bags with you on tour, don't you?
Well, yeah, we used to play a lot when we were on tour because we were the opening act for Cher at one point, and we basically, we were on at 7 o'clock, played till like 7:30, and then we were gone. So we didn't have to do sound check till 4 or 5, so we had the whole day, and so we would trade tickets for tea time.
Wow.
And, play all these beautiful courses, but I haven't really picked up a stick since 2016. Actually.
Wow.
It's been a while. Yeah, I kind of put it aside for a minute. I was like, I wanted to practice more drums, and it was taking too much time away from that.
And I love that too. I love that you here, because it's kind of something. There's a bunch of new things that have opened up to me over the last 5 years. Not that I was always investigating something, but musically I've been doing engineering and playing. But you play golf, and I know you've been and here you are, like you're going back to playing more drums and getting better at drums, which there's a lot of people out there don't realize, like even pro guys, and I think even more so pro guys want to always get better and try to investigate new areas in music where they can get better. And you've always been somebody that, like, when I ran into you at the center staging that time, when they were the cutting room, when they were having the party, and there were a bunch of drummers there, and you introduced me to a guy that you were taking some getting some lessons from, and I love that about you, Sam, that you're always wanting to get better, man.
Well, it's just like any other thing, like say even a golfer, they have to golf all the time, and for me I couldn't really be a good golfer and a good drummer at the same time. I have some friends that are, and I'm very jealous of them. But for me, it's just a thing I have to kind of work on and keep up to a certain level. And, it's the beautiful thing about an instrument, especially drums. You can always learn. There's always, some place to go.
Right.
You can get better.
Yeah.
So I dig that challenge about it.
Well, that's amazing, because you've been playing since you were, like 12 years old, that you started playing, and so however old you are now, I mean, all these years later, that you're still trying to get better. I mean, that is very impressive.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, well, it's there's a lot of these kids now that are just so good, because there's such a
right.
Well, you see these kids that are 19,
right,
that are just shredding.
And 19, Sam. I'm teaching a kid right now that is one of the shows we do at School Rock is the Metallica show. And I got this kid, David Lopez. He's 15, 14. And he sits down and plays a song called The Shortest Straw, and Blackened. And I'm telling you, it's like, are you kidding? There's like weird drop beats, odd time, double bass stuff, and single bass stuff done, like Lars, which like Bob Rock would cut up and do stuff. This kid's playing it. And I sit there and I marvel. I'm like, where? And he goes, YouTube. I said, where'd you learn that? YouTube. Stuff that we didn't have. No excuses here, but man, they got so much info, and if you're willing to work at it, you could become amazing. And I see freaks out there, man.
Well, the access to information is great, and you come across, you have all these different things. You have these guys that can really play. Like, I know guys that are faster with their feet than I am with my hands. But then you get the other guys that really understand, like, when to use it, how to use it, and it's like a whole new breed of cats now. That I listen to these guys. I'm like, Jesus, I better be practicing all day, just to stay ahead,
Yeah. Musicality, that you brought that up. That's understanding and knowing where to play, when not to play. I mean, that was the thing about the old joke about people talk about Steve Gadd. When you ask, and I wish I could tell the joke, but Steve was the go-to guy, and most times it was like what not to play. He was always just so incredibly. Why don't you even fill that hole? A lot of young drummers like, I got a space, I'm going to use it. Gadd was the guy that was a minimalist, and then when it was time to go, you get stuff like Asia, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I saw a clinic with Alan Schwartzberg in the 80s,
wow.
and he sat down, and for like 5 minutes, he just played all these great chops and fills and crazy shit, and then at the end of that, he goes, you hear that? He goes, not once I've ever played any of that on a record.
True, right? Because, yeah.
Mm. Yeah. So just knowing, but there's room for that. There's these kids that they're pushing the boundary now, and they're like saying, well, here is what is kind of acceptable. I mean, it's just amazing. Some of these kids, I'm really impressed. There's
me too.
Yeah, it's great.
Me too. I love seeing it. It's you could either embrace it or just be so. it could just throw you in like to covers being over your head, going like, oh, why didn't I practice more? But but it's great to see these kids, and my mission the last especially since we didn't tour this year was educating. And it's funny. My teacher back when I was younger, I studied with Joe Casadas for a few years, and I thought Joe gave me a real great foundation for reading and understanding notes and things like that. So sometimes, like when I get a student that comes to me, they're like, why do I need to do this? I say, well, because you can't get the Z if you don't start by A. You have to learn this. And sometimes they're like, well, can't I just go play, a black dog? I said, no, we're going to learn that, we're doing the buddy book, and either they do it or they go to somebody else. But Joe was a guy that, instilled that into me, and I kind of do it. But it's been my mission at the school that you're going to learn how to read this thing. It's been good.
Yeah, Joe was a great guy.
Wasn't
he? I have very few regrets in my life. One is that I didn't work on my reading as well. Like, I can read. I'm not a great sight reader, but you got to have a good combination.
Well, you play Broadway though. I mean, that's amazing because you're looking at charts. But there's a lot of people though that don't understand. And I tell them, I said, you don't have to become a great reader. It's nice if you do. But if you're a proficient reader, and as you especially another instrument, or you can at least write down chords. But if you have a knowledge of notes and enough that you can look at a chart and have an understanding, you're going to go a long way. That's what I try to tell people, that you could do it. So you just said it yourself. You consider yourself, you're probably a better reader than you're saying, Sammy. But again, because guys that are like, look at, they're reading it and feeling it immediately. It's like apparently Gad's like that, but
I hate those guys.
Yeah, I know. Me too. Me too. I'm not that guy. I remember when I was with Joe, we were just starting to get into Frank Sinatra charts, and I stopped. The Hooters got really busy at the time. It was before it was signed, but we were playing everywhere, and I never got into that. And back then, when we took a lesson down there on 46th Street, we used to put headphones on. He had a record. It wasn't even a tape. I think he had like a reel-to-reel there, and then we had a record player, and somehow he'd set up where you could hear it, and we were playing like New York, and I think the week I was about to start playing those two charts, I had to quit because if you showed up with a lesson with Joe, and you weren't prepared, he'd hit you with a stick.
I had a teacher like that too.
Yeah.
It happened once. I showed up for a lesson and I was playing, and this is back in the 70s, and this guy Mickey Aratano was very important to me as a teacher and a friend.
That's great.
And, I showed up for this lesson, and he knew right away I didn't have it. So he goes, oh, hey man, he goes, can you pay me like now? He says, pay me ahead of time. I said, yeah. So I pulled my $5, so that's what the lesson cost then. Yeah. And I give him the $5. He goes, get the hell out of here. He goes, don't come and waste my time. He goes, come back when you know this lesson. So I kind of got kicked out the door, went home, shed the lesson all day. I just played that lesson, and I came back, with my tail between my legs, knocking on his door the next day, and he goes, you ready? I said, yes. I go in and I played. He goes, good. He goes, now give me another $5 for the lesson. So I had to pay him twice that week. Right. But it was a good lesson, on being prepared and showing up, and being ready for something, And I've never forgotten that.
We got the same sort of story from, Jimmy Paxson, don't you, the drummer?
Jimmy's great.
Jimmy was on the show, and he was taking lessons from Maury in L.A., and he shows up for a lesson, and Jimmy had balls. He's actually playing and thinking he's going to play the lesson, and maybe his teacher wouldn't know that he was playing something else, kind of like trying to pull the wool over his eyes. And the teacher turned to me and said, you think I'm an old man, don't know that you're trying to screw me on this lesson. He goes, hey, have your dad stop at the hardware store and maybe pick up some plumbing tools and stuff, because I think you'll be a better plumber than a drummer. Get the fuck out of here. So.
It's great, man.
It's good. But, we all have them. You have to be prepared.
Hey, we
got questions for Sam. Sam, you and I can go nuts because he's such a bud. We got to ask him some questions.
Well, Dave, you brought up Broadway, so why don't we start there? Yeah. I mean, that's got to be something. I mean, you hear about the rigors of being in a Broadway show and the commitment that it takes, and you've been in 2 of them. Plus, there was a third that was on tap that is on hold because of COVID, Diana. But you were obviously in Kinky Boots and Pretty Woman the musical, and being part of that whole experience. I mean, that's got to be wild, I would imagine, being part of a Broadway production like that. 2 of them.
Well, it was really great because I didn't get into Broadway till I was around 55 years old. I had tried to get in before and I just couldn't get in. There was just doors kept shut. But I had done all the demos for Kinky Boots with Cindy, and they had a couple other drummers. And Cindy's very particular. She's an awesome woman, but she knows what she wants.
Yeah, no doubt.
I love her for that. But she kept firing drummers, and then finally after the 3rd drummer came in, she just slammed her feet down and said, Sam's going to do this. And that's it. I'm not going to argue with you anymore. So they said, okay. So then she calls me. She goes, "You'll do it, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." So
this is after she fires and she calls you. Goes, "You sure, Sammy?"
Yeah. So luckily they let me. The good thing about that is I got to create the drum part. So it wasn't. There wasn't a ton of reading in there. They basically transcribed all my stuff. And. But they let me kind of go crazy with all the Ableton stuff. And I think we were one of the first shows to use Ableton. So I was running Ableton click tracks and loops and stuff.
Right.
And they were great because they would say, we need a loop for this thing. I said, okay. So I'd come home and I'd come up with 5 loops, and bring them in and let them pick then. So I would give them an extra amount,
Right.
And so then it became the whole show was run on that, and I would run everything. So
what a setup too!
That was
your
great.
setup was amazing at the theater. Sam, Dallin, and I went to see Kinky Boots, and Sam, Sam let me see his setup, and I got a tour. We got a great backstage tour. I mean, thank you, Sam. By the way, it was we were blown away. We were blown away by. And Sam's drums were set up. There was the pit, and you were up on what floor were you on there?
I was on the 5th floor.
5th floor, right?
Spotlight operators.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it was awesome. And he had this room, and it was to every drummer's envy. I walked in there, and I saw this room, and it was all Sam. The kit was set up there. You had it was that an acoustic and a digital kit, right? Did you? Or was
it was a combination.
Combination.
There was no samples being triggered from my acoustic drums. It was all acoustic sound. But
Wow.
then there was like electronic kit to the lefts.
Yeah.
And I could just kind of swing around and play different stuff because
What a
the show
setup.
went from dance music to rock stuff. And it was a lot of stuff. But
so much
great.
fun. Now you were getting paid to do that. Now, which was so much fun. And how many shows a day were you doing?
Well, there's 8 shows a week you do on Broadway, and so, but you can sub out. If say I had a session one day, I could call one of my subs. And luckily, I had some really great guys that kind of come in and would cover for me.
Well,
so but I did a lot of shows. I enjoyed playing it, and I enjoyed the whole theater.
Well, yeah, I mean, Kinky Boots ran for I think 6 years. How many of those years were you with it, or was it the whole time? Or?
I was
Long
there.
time.
No, I left after about 4.5 years to go to do Pretty Woman, because Jim Valance and Brian Adams were writing the music, and my friend Will Van Dyke was a conductor, and I've always wanted to work with Brian.
Yeah, he's great.
And because Mickey Curry is like one of my favorite all-time drummers. I mean,
yeah, mine too.
He's just like the guy. So I got to do my, I was like, well, I know what Brian likes. He likes that kind of thing, and we just hit it off right. And that was the same thing. They had fired a couple drummers, and then they came to me. It's like I keep coming in after they fire these other drummers, and then they finally come around and go, yeah, we should have got him to start with. But that was another one. I got to originate the book on that one also.
Wow. Yeah.
Which was great, and that only ran for a year, but it was a great year, and I really enjoyed it. The whole process was great.
Well, we've this is our 81st episode of the In the Pocket podcast, and we've played a lot of music on the show. We've yet to play anything from a Broadway musical. Yeah. And Sammy, you sent us, or you suggested we play "You and I" from Pretty Woman.
Cool.
So we could play just a bit of this to hear a little Broadway, a class up the podcast here a little bit.
Yeah, it certainly does with Sam. Sam's class, man.
Sure.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Darling, you look beautiful tonight. I can't remember ever seeing anything so right. In the magic of the moment, there's no place I'd rather be. I see the wonder of the world through your eyes. To have you here beside me makes me realize everything is different, everything has changed inside of me.
I'm bummed I didn't get it to see that. Working with Brian must, like you were saying, you always wanted to work with, and that must have been a thrill. I know Brian because we toured with Mick, was also a good friend of mine, and I know Keith is actually a good friend. All those guys, Brian, amazing, and Brian, what a writer, and I could hear. So him and Valence wrote that.
You can
song.
tell us immediately,
Yeah,
two seconds into the song, you can say this is a Brian
Yeah,
Adams song.
yeah,
I mean, you can,
yeah. Is it that pre-chorus?
Oh,
You could hear that pre-chorus where he's going. Amazing. Yeah.
And the greatest part was when we were cutting the cast album. We were at Power Station, but Brian was singing.
Oh, what a voice!
Because we just had the band, and they're cutting all the tracks for a few days.
Yeah.
And just hearing him sing.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy can sing the phone book.
Well, you hear him talk. He sounds great when he talks. He has a great voice.
Yeah.
You know.
So, yeah, it was just like I'd look over at him while we were playing. I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So it was great, you know. So,
Yeah.
But then, you know, after that one, you know, I got when we were talking about reading here. You know, my third show that I'm kind of involved. Well, I am involved now is Diana. It's about Princess Diana,
Wow.
and you know, we were in previews, and that came about again. The drummer that was going to do it booked himself on another show, not knowing this was coming to Broadway. So I got this call at the last minute to you know, take the gig. So I was happy to take it. Sure. And it was David Bryan from Bon Jovi who wrote the music.
Right.
It's like I ended up working with all these 80s rockers. That's on Broadway. I become their drummer, you know.
There, it's all right.
And but it's great, you know. But geez, I lost my train of thought here now.
No,
oh yeah. So the thing about this one, I had to read, and so this guy John Clancy is the orchestrator. I don't know if you know John. Great orchestrator. He's done a bunch of shows. He's a drummer, but he plays a million instruments. But he orchestrated the show. So he sent me these charts, and I was like, oh man. So I really had.
Yeah.
I really wanted to do. He had everything so worked out. I was like, I've got to honor these charts. You know, and I didn't want to just. You know, he let me do a little bit of my interpretation of them, but I was really trying to hone in on what he did because, you know, everything he put on top, he started with the drums. And so I wanted to keep that foundation there. So I ended up shedding it very heavily, and it worked out really great.
Plus, you wanted a challenge to do that, I'm sure, Sammy. It's like, you know, when you're doing one thing, and then I knowing you're probably like, hey, I want to deliver how he visioned it. It was probably meant a lot to you to do that,
Absolutely, to get his whole thing. And, you know, like I said, everything was already set to go on top of it, so that had to be there, you know. And it was really a good lesson, basically. I felt like I was studying with him, you know. He kind of, it was different than how I normally played. Like things I would play starting with my left, he'd start with his right, and vice versa. And Phil's it was just from a different wheelhouse. Yeah. And it actually made me a better drummer by, like, trying to interpret what he was saying instead of this time saying, well, here's what I would have done. It's like, let me do what you would have done, and it made me a better player.
Wow. How much fun.
It was good. It was good. Yeah, so that's coming out actually, you know, that will be out on Netflix. They filmed it.
Oh.
So that'll be out in March. It'll actually before we open, and then we'll come back out on either in the summer and the fall. Yeah. After it's been out on Netflix. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that.
I can't wait till we get back to the Broadway thing. I'm down and are dying to get up to New York. One, to see a show, hang with you. Sam is also king of the great cocktail and knows the best burger in New York. And pizza, man. Knows the good hang.
Your favorite
Raoul's,
thing.
baby. I love to eat, man.
When you come up, you and Dal, you got to come here, and we'll grill some steaks out in the backyard. I found a really great steak place, Purveyor.
Yeah.
Master Purveyors, and so I get all my steaks from them now. So we'll grill some steaks.
You're in, baby.
Hang out in the back.
We are in. We're up. We're in. She's going to hear this. Let's get this social distancing over. Move on. Get the vaccination. Boom. We're there, Sam.
There you go.
We're there.
Great. That'll be great.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go back to the beginning, Sammy. You grew up in Ohio, or you were born in Akron, right? And
right.
And you're one of 11 children, which is that's fascinating to me. I mean, was there a lot of musicians among your siblings, or?
Well, my father was a musician. He played accordion, and that's how he put us all through school. He
wow.
played every Friday and Saturday night. He taught a couple days a week.
I didn't know that.
Musician.
Wow.
Oh yeah. He played all the time. He was like the big accordion player in the area, you know, and he could really play. And so he really supported me, my father, and he was always, and my mother as well. She was the one during the day. If I didn't want to practice, she's like, "No, you're going down to practice," which wasn't very often. But the days I didn't want to, she was pushing me down there.
That's awesome.
And I have a younger brother, Angelo, that's a photographer now, but he was also a pretty good drummer. But as far as the 11, I'm the only one that became a pro at it.
Yeah.
What number were you? Among the 11, what number were you?
I was the 4th.
Wow.
Okay, so one of the older ones. But,
I mean, that in Akron, people that listen. I mean, what a music an area. I mean, that part of the United States around there. I mean, great musicians have come out of that area, and so you've always had, like, I remember, guitar players. That whole, you guys had like a scene, and then you ended up going. Did you go to New York from there, or is that how you left?
Well, yeah, well, Akron was a big rock and roll town, and I was in a bunch of bands in there. And, you played Cleveland, the Agora Ballroom.
Yeah, I played there. Yeah,
played there.
Oh.
And I'm sure you played there. It was one of my favorite places
Loved
I ever
it.
played. But there was places to play when I grew up, and people
Yeah.
loved it. We played 1,500 people as a local band.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I got kind of tired of being in New York. I mean, of being in Ohio, and I wanted to go to New York or L.A. And then this friend of mine, Lenny Williams, had been playing with Chubby Checker, and I knew him from when I had one other job in a music store, and I'd met him. He was a young kid that couldn't afford to buy a guitar, and the boss never liked him to come in. But I would call him and tell him, "Hey, man, boss is on lunch. Come and play." And then he'd get out before the boss came back. Anyway, he got this gig. He got this gig with Chubby Checker, and Chubby was playing they were like the Ramones. They were playing everything fast and rocking.
Yeah.
So anyway, Lenny called me, said Chubby's looking for a drummer, and so Chubby called me, and I ended up flying up to New York.
Yeah.
Into Newark, they picked me up, went into the city, and they were doing a gig at the Ritz. And so they did their sound check. And
the old
Chubby
Ritz,
called
the old Ritz, probably, right?
The old Ritz, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, downtown. And I think it's called Webster Hall now, or I don't even know if it's still there. Anyway, so they do their sound check, and everything sounds great. So Chubby says, "Okay, come on up, it's time to audition." So we start playing, and we're playing the twist, and it's like screamingly fast, So I'm playing about 30, and I'm playing hard and loud. I'm playing about 30 seconds, and I break the snare drum head.
Wow.
And I'm like, "Oh, no, man, they just did their sound check. He's going to be pissed."
Yeah.
And he turns around and goes, "What happened?" I said, "Sorry, Chubb, I broke the snare drum head." He goes, "You're hired." And that was it. So that was November 6th of 1980, and I moved up here on the 26th of December.
And that was kind of your entryway into the New York scene, pretty much, getting that gig with Chubby?
Well, yeah, so I got that, but then we went on the road for a year and a half. So I had a little apartment in Queens that I just left my stuff at, but I wasn't here that much. And then around May of, what year was that, 2002, I guess, I left that gig and I came back to the city then. And
you mean 82?
82.
May of 82.
82.
82, yeah, sorry.
Right.
82.
Yeah, I just didn't want to. We didn't want to fly through 22 years that quickly.
And with Chubby. Chubby.
Yeah. So then I moved back into the city and started working around here.
Yeah. Right. You did a lot of great gigs, and one of the things that you're really known for, and and early on you became very proficient. As a matter of fact, a great programmer. You embraced that world like Brawl Hour, like you guys. That's a world you knew. And I remember when I first heard your name was, who programmed it? It was Sammy, because I didn't know you then, because of Rick Chertoff. But you did a lot of that, right?
Yeah, well, that was kind of, that summer that I left that Chubby's gig, I was like, I wanted to practice and get better, because I was like, I'm in New York, I really got to really tighten my stuff up, Yeah. And so I bought a Lindrum, and my dad co-signed a loan for me. I found out recently that he passed a few years ago, but I found out recently that he actually put the house up as collateral for me to get this Lindrum.
Oh, wow. Wow.
He never told me that, but my brother told me that later.
Wow.
Anyway, isn't that wild?
Yeah.
It was $3,000 back then,
Once me, I get tears. That's amazing, Sammy. That's amazing.
Oh, my dad was awesome.
Yeah.
But, anyway, I bought this Lindrum to practice with, basically, to get my time together,
Yeah.
So anyway, it just kind of started taking on a life of its own, and I was kind of fascinated with it because sonically it was cool, it was different, it was just a whole new thing, So then I moved into Manhattan, and I was going on my way to an audition for the Psychedelic Furs, and I was really broke. I'd put my last money into the apartment to get there. It was like 2 days after I moved in. I had $5 left in my name, and so I'm on the way to the first thing, and I'm kind of early. I'm gonna go get a beer. So I went into this the Prince Street bar, and I'm sitting there, and I had $5, and I get a beer, and it was $3, and I didn't even have enough for another beer, and I just told the guy, I just keep it. I can't do anything with that $2 anymore. So I'm sitting there drinking this beer, and these two guys are talking. And I hear him talking. Should we use a drum machine or live drums tomorrow on our session? And I'm picking this up. So I go, hey, I said I program drums, and they said, really? I said, yeah. I said, I got a Linn drum. They said, are you any good? I said, I'm the best in town.
Good for you.
I like it.
So they said, well, what do you charge? I said, what are you paying? And he says, we can give you $50. And I went, well, that's and in my head I'm going, I can really use that $50 right now.
Yeah.
I said, that's lower than I normally do, but yeah, I'll do it. So I went and did that session the next day.
Yeah.
And I met this Steve Rosen, the studio owner at this place, Park South, who introduced me to Joe Vanieri, who was the producer, owner there.
Joe, yeah.
Anyway, I started doing records with him there, and I can trace my career as a programmer to that day.
Wow.
Because that was like the turning point because through that is where I met Larry Blackman from Cameo and all these people. It all goes back to that one day walking in that bar and seeing that door open with these guys, and
think about
getting,
that.
So if you had chosen to spend your last $5 on a cup of coffee as opposed to a beer, your career, none of this would have happened.
Which I wouldn't be talking right now.
Wow.
Who knows?
Well, that's always blows my mind, and we've had a lot of our guests. It is like one moment like that where everything changes. And just obviously, to be successful in this business, you have to be talented and you have to work your ass off.
Yeah.
But you also need luck.
I mean, you need the right place at the right time.
Because there's a lot of talented people out there who never, for whatever reason, never make it. And it's right place, right time, and you would have made it anyway, Sammy. I'm sure, but it is
cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah, but it's a cool moment like that.
So you were doing a lot of that stuff before the program and stuff because I know you Rick was on the Sophie record and other records when it was anything that had to be programmed, he'd call you. That Linn thing. I know Eric was big on the Linn. I knew the Linn because Eric was saying, hey, can you play to that or can you play that? Can you work with that? I remember because Zombies, that that little top end thing to all you zombies, it's a Linn drum machine I'm playing to, so that was, and you used to do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, well, I got heavy into it. Like, I would just buy anything that came out. Every new drum machine, every new sampler, every new Simmons set. I was just totally into it.
I'd call you to ask you, how does that work? I don't know if you recall.
I got a lot of those calls,
I would call Sam going, what does that red button do over there?
Yeah, I loved it. It was being able to do the Sophie's record, which was great.
Yeah.
When we did Damn, that was I remember buying an H3000 sampler just so I could change speeds of beats back then because it was much different. You didn't have access to all the stuff you have now. So it was buying all ththese pieces of gear to make things do different things. And
but you were a visionary, Sam, because you had to see, you knew when it's like because your mind worked like an engineer. Because you're an engineer, you had to figure out. Oh, I know what they're going to need, so I'm going to have to get this because that'll be able to get there. You had to figure. You were like to be one step ahead of everybody. That's really remarkable.
Well, just in case people don't realize what record we're talking about here, it's Sophie B. Hawkins' "Damn, I Wish I Was Your Lover," which is a huge hit and
massive.
And you were part of a lot of other huge hits in the '80s. Billy Joel's "We Didn't Start the Fire."
Yeah.
I mean, that's talk about a song that
was. I played a little bit of percussion, not a ton on that. I played some percussion on that.
Right, but
I love that.
It was great to work with Billy, and it was awesome.
Wow.
Awesome experience.
And then just talking about some of the huge songs you played on, you mentioned Cameo, Larry Blackman and Cameo, and their album Word Up, which was a massive album in 1986.
Yeah. Word Up.
And the title track, Word Up. Talk about getting involved with Cameo, and then we'll play a little of Word Up just to remind people, in case they haven't heard it in a while, what a huge song that was.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is this goes back to that studio, Park South. I was doing this record with the Weather Girls, and I cut a track with them, programmed this track, we put it down, and then they were doing some overdubs, and I'm sitting out in the lobby of the studio just reading the paper, and I hear some guy go, "Hey man, that's a great drum sound." And he goes, "Who's the drummer on that?" And I said, "Me." And I'm not even looking up, I'm just kind of reading this thing, He goes, "Oh, we're going to do a record, man." He goes, "You want to do a record?" And I look up, and it's Larry Blackman,
Yeah.
From Cameo. And I'm like, "Oh, hey." He says, "Yeah." He says, "We're starting this record next week. You want to come and do it?" So I'm like, "Absolutely," So we went in and we did Single Life.
Yeah.
And then,
wow.
And Larry, founding father of funk. I mean, just awesome drummer.
Yeah.
We hit it off just great. So then, I toured with them for a little bit over in England.
Yeah.
We did this tour promoting that, and then after that, he said we're coming back. He kind of figured something out about payola and radio promo and stuff. He says my next record's going to be even bigger. So we came back and we did Word Up.
Hey, was he a Tama guy, Blackman? I think he was for a little while.
Yeah,
I remember. I think I did a promo thing with that guy years ago. I think
he
I did.
Was great.
Yeah, the wild hair.
He was great, and he was just a killer. It was great because when we went through the tour, I was playing a song. He goes, "Yeah, it doesn't feel right," and I was like, "Well, show me." So he'd sit down and play, and you go, "Oh, okay, now I get where he's kind of placing things." You know?
Yeah.
But after Word Up came out, and at that point. That record just exploded.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't really afford to tour with them anymore because what they were paying for a week, I was getting in a day, in the studio because all of a sudden my career just skyrocketed after that record because everyone wants you to be that guy,
Yeah. What a great thing, though, man.
I like. I like his confidence. You were saying that he knew this was going to be a hit. I mean, a lot of times people say, they think the success of an album will catch people off guard, but he said to you, "We're going to make something even bigger after Single Life." I mean, he kind of knew.
He kind of figured out how the business worked a little bit, but he also had Word Up, I think, in his head, and he said the next record we do is going to be massive. And he changed. At that point, everyone was using these big, lush, reverbed out drums, and on that record, there's no reverb at all. Like he fired an engineer. He said no reverb in the control room, even when we're cutting. And so he fired an engineer for putting reverb on something. but sonically,
80s.
that was a whole new thing happening at that point. And and Larry had the vision for that stuff. And between everybody involved, there were certain engineers, Eric Calvi, and between him, me, Larry, everybody, there was guys that had vision for stuff. And I'm always trying to get back to that moment in my life of creativity because it was
fun.
It was just these moments where stuff was just flowing without even thinking about it.
Right.
It was just an awesome time, and it was a lot of change going on then. So it was very experimental. People were very cool, and I loved it.
Well, the album Word Up, it was one of the biggest albums of 1986. It went platinum. It was #1 on the R&B and hip hop charts. I think NME ranked it as the 5th best album of the year. The title track was a top 10 hit and #1 on the R&B charts, and you couldn't avoid it in 1986. So let's hear a little of Word Up and great Sammy Merendino.
Y'all pretty ladies around the world got a weird thing to show you, so tell all the boys and girls
Great. Hey, so in the very intro, like the pattern you program that pattern. I hear this dotted eighth note in the very beginning, but it never happened. I mean, and what that little clip we heard never happens again. Only one time. It's great.
On what?
And
The dotted eighth on what?
On the odd in the very beginning, it goes. You do this, boom, boom, and I think it happens. Maybe it happens a couple times, but I only heard it once. And then you got that.
Yeah, those are occasional, the little pickup.
Yeah.
On the bass. Yeah.
So good. I thought it happened more. That's great.
Yeah, that's one of the few records I've done where I wouldn't change a thing. Most things I hear later, I go like, I wish I would have done this, but
it's perfect.
That record in particular, I'm like, I'm happy with everything on it.
Oh, that must feel so good because such a long time ago, and you get to hear it and you go, oh wow, it does hold up. That's a great feeling. To have something like that where you go back and go, oh, it was as good as I thought it was. That's awesome, Sam.
Well, this is like you with dance. You hear that, you go like, yeah. It's that moment. And that's the thing I like about recording is capturing. Yeah. When you capture that moment that just happens to fly in the studio, and you either grab it or you don't. Right. And especially like say Word Up. Right away from the downbeat, you go, oh, that's Word Up.
Yeah, right away.
It's one of those things that just happened, and it's like I'm grateful that I've had that. It was a great time.
And you said after that album came out, I mean, your life pretty much changed. I mean, is that where kind of the corner turned as far as everybody wanted you pretty much after that?
Yeah, well, Single Life came out, and I was doing some records, and I was doing. I also was doing a lot of commercials in New York, so. But when Word Up came out, then it was just like I was turning down, so much work. I turned down $100,000 of work a year just because I didn't have time to do it. I was doing 5-6 sessions a day, and I had two setups that would piggyback. So I'd be doing one session. My cartage guy would go take my other setup.
Who was your cartage guy in New York?
Well, I had Big Mike, and I also had this guy Kenny Ania. I had two different guys.
All right.
And they would go and they would set it up, and I would just kind of walk into the session with my bag of samples. And I also made a lot of back then. I made all my own samples. I didn't like to use stock sound, so I'd go into like Atlantic Studio or somewhere and buy it for the day and just bring in tons of drums and have Artie Smith come in and do it. And I would sample great guy, and I would sample everything so that when I came in to program, they were my sounds. Yeah. And I didn't sound like every other guy because that was very important to me back then to not be, I didn't want to be.
I was thinking about Artie. One thing about Artie, sometimes he could be opinionated, or right. So I've heard stories where he'd tell somebody I forget who it was, the drummer, but Artie was in a room and he said he heard a track. He said, you know what? If you turn that stick around and played on the butt of it, it's going to sound. And he goes, oh damn! If Artie wasn't right. He's like just hitting with the back of the stick. It changed everything for the guy. Artie had great instincts, man.
Oh, Artie's great. Well, he's still out there. He's out with Jordan. He was he's been tagging for Jordan.
Wow.
Yeah, he was the cat.
Yeah.
The cat.
Yeah. Maybe it was Steve that did say that. So.
Are there any gigs? Are there any gigs you turned down because you didn't have time that now you look back and wish, wow, I should have taken that one, or you can't really do that?
Well, mostly it was. I wish I would have toured more with Cameo, just because when I look back at a nine, I did recently see some old footage from us in England, and I was like, man, that band was great, and it was horns, and it was just a wild thing. I wish I would have toured more with them, but I don't want to regret anything because everything I did led me to where I am now, and had I said, oh, I wish I would have done this, my life might have been different.
Right.
And, and I've been fortunate to work with a lot of different people. So.
Well, I mean, there's so many. We're not going to have time to go through all of them. I mean, names like Lou Reed, Aretha Franklin, the Beach Boys, Roberta Flack. I mean, it's just Pat Metheny, Foreigner. I mean, there's, I don't even know because you can't pin down one story in the next, 20 minutes. But is there anything that jumps? Was there any person you worked with that? Not because obviously you'd established yourself and you had worked with a ton of people, but were there any moments or person that you worked with that this one felt particularly special to you?
Well, of course, Cindy. With Cindy is when I started touring again. I met her. She came to my studio. We have a mutual friend, Stuart Lehrman, who was supposed to record a track for this Rugrats this Rugrats movie, and he couldn't do it. He said, well, go to Sam's studio, and he'll record the track, and maybe he'll put some drums on it for you, too. So she came to my studio, and we started cutting this Rugrats thing that she had written with Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo. And so, we cut the track, and we hit it off right away. And so she said, well, I'm going to be starting my next record. You want to do it? And I was like, sure. And actually, I think you're on a cut on that record.
Oh, is that you mean Hat Full of Stars?
No. After that, it was Water's Edge.
Maybe
Water's Edge on it. Shine.
Yeah.
Shine.
Yeah.
You're on
something.
Yeah. Oh, Hard to Be Me.
Okay.
Isn't that you on that?
I'm not sure. I did a.
I think it is.
Okay. Well,
Anyway,
I'm gonna go listen.
Anyway, maybe it is. I thought it was you. Anyway, maybe I'm wrong. We just hit it off and started working together. And so next thing I knew, she never really asked me to be in her band, but she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go on tour for a week. You want to go?" I was like, "Yeah." And then it was like a few more weeks, and then before I knew it, I was in her band.
Yeah. Is that
so,
what did? And Bill was Bill playing with her at the time?
Bill was the bass player, engineer, and
because you've
producer.
done a lot of stuff with Bill, Bill Whitman, who's been on the podcast, right?
Right, who was through Rick Chertoff and that whole crew. It's like, again, it's like how you're kind of connected through people.
Everybody.
But working with Cindy was great. She was, there was one record, the last record, where the producer didn't want to use me. He wanted to use Steve Gadd and Steve Jordan, and Cindy basically told him, if you don't use Sam, you're not producing the record. Now, nobody does that, And she was just, we just hit it off. We had a really nice thing. So when we were touring, I do miss that. I miss being on stage with her now. I had to, leave the band because I was doing Pretty Woman. It conflicted, and I just chose Pretty Woman, because it was, a year's worth of work compared to 3 months.
Right.
But to me, her and I just had this really nice connection on stage. I kind of knew where she was going, and we just, hit it off. So, I would say Cameo and Cindy are probably two of my favorite artists that I've really worked with. I learned a lot from Larry, and Cindy, I went all over the world, and that led me to Broadway. So everywhere you go, everything you do kind of leads you to the next thing you're going to do. But certain ones like Cindy, she's opened a lot of doors for me. So I'll always be grateful to her for that. I'm
so happy to see her have this whole like her career, like she's just had such longevity, and just because obviously we both as well as I do the kind of talent she is. I mean, I remember just meeting her before she did She's So Unusual, and she was very unusual, and it was like, but she was like, wow, and she first looked like a little bit of a doll, but I mean, and I don't want, but she was just. You knew something, some kind of light surrounded her. You hear this about people, but she was, my jaw kind of dropped, like, wow, I just met somebody, and then she became Cyndi Lauper,
Well, she's the real deal.
Yeah, no doubt.
The real deal.
Oh, yeah. Done sessions, like I've experienced her in the studio, and I remember she said, I'm working with two guys I play with in band, and she says to me in the studio, it's like 3 a.m. at studio, and she says, she told me nothing, don't you listen to those two guys, you just listen to me. I was like, don't fuck with me, I was like, okay, all right, I'm there. I didn't even look at those two guys. She likes to be the boss. Makes it clear.
She is. It's her band.
Yeah,
it's her band. It's that's whose name's on the headline there.
Yeah,
Cindy. So,
she's wonderful. And
awesome
like I've been around her. Last time I saw her, my wife and I were up, Dale and I were at Atlantic City, and she had this little pup, this dog, and she was just so great to hang with. She was chill. You were maybe I don't know if you were playing or not, but I remember it was just we just really had a nice hang with her, and she seemed like to drop her, because when you're a performer like that, sometimes you got to always be on. It was just nice to see her being kind of vulnerable and being herself, and it was really nice. Good hang with her.
Oh yeah, she's a wonderful woman. Like I said, eternally grateful to her.
Yeah. And we owe it all to a Rugrats movie. Is that pretty much where the connection started, right? Stuart
Lerman in a Rugrats movie. Yeah.
Stuart's another one who does great work. It's done amazing, Atlantic City, all this great music. Stuart's a genius, really, really great engineer, producer, writer.
Great engineer, producer. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a great guy and chill.
Yeah,
Great to
totally.
hang with.
Totally.
Well, speaking, you mentioned speaking of producers, Sammy is obviously you've done a lot of that. Having in your studio there in New York. I mean, that's been a big chunk of your recent work, right? You do a lot of producing there.
Yeah, I do a lot of producing, a lot of remote recording, drums and stuff. Lately, I've been producing mostly. I have a new band with Matt Beck and Richard Hammond. It's a trio, a power pop trio. So we've been cutting tracks during this whole, COVID thing. I was gonna produce Matt's record 5 years ago, and we both got tied up with shows, and he got tied up with Matchbox and Rob Thomas. So when COVID hit, I called him. I said, "Now's the time." So we started working on tracks, and we were like, "Why don't we just make it a band?" So we're finishing up the album now, and that should be coming out pretty soon.
Are you all doing it in your studios? Is it remotely? Are you doing it that way?
Everything's remote.
Yeah.
And so like Matt will come up with an idea for a song, and he'll send me a rough, and I'll cut the drums, then it goes to him, then it goes to Richard. It just kind of bounces around, and then we have our weekly meetings on Mondays, and we work on production ideas and stuff.
That's great.
Everyone kind of works on it, but it was trying to make it sound like we're all in the same room, and I think we succeeded.
Yeah, that's great. I can't wait to hear that. Eric Bazoo's living in Sweden, and he put out a new record, and I played on a bunch of tracks on that, and we did that remotely. And the challenge was like to try to, and our method was a lot like you were talking about. He'd send me something, I put down some drums. He goes, "Oh, I made this work," and then boom, and then at the end of the day, when you listen back, and the guy that was mixing it was in Slovenia, Martin Strbernik. So we'd hear this, and it was like, wow, man, I'm having a ball with the remote stuff. It's
it's
really
great.
cool.
I mean, it's good and bad. I miss the interaction.
Yeah, I do
with
too.
People because remotely you're kind of just reacting.
Yeah.
There's no real interaction, but that makes it the challenge of trying to make it feel like you're actually playing with somebody in a room.
Right. Right. Wow. Cool.
Hey, let's hear a little more Sammy's work. You suggested we haven't talked about Ziggy Marley at all, but you played on his album One Bright Day, which won a Grammy for Best Reggae Album. I think came out in 1989, and you suggested we play the song "Look Who's Dancing." Any stories of working with Ziggy before we play a little of that?
Well, one of the good things working with him was I got to meet Rita.
Wow.
She came in, on the second day and was just saying how much she loved what we were doing. And Ziggy was the real deal. I kind of changed this hi-hat pattern up ever so slightly. And he just looked at me. He's like, "No, man." He goes, old pattern, man.
Old pattern.
He heard the most minute little tiny details.
Wow.
Ever. I was really surprised. And it was just,
Yeah.
You don't often get to get that kind of call.
Did you ever work with Sly Dunbar? Because, another reggae Jamaican legend. Did you ever work with Sly? Did you ever work with Sly and Robbie?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't. I think Jimmy might have. Braylard might have.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay.
But those guys were great.
Yeah.
That was a great rhythm section. But it was just, it was an awesome experience to get to work with him,
Wow.
Well, let's get a little reggae music going. This is Ziggy Marley, "Look Who's Dancing," featuring the work of Sammy Merendino.
First the dance floor was like a forbidden land where
Yeah. That's righteous.
That
Sam.
takes you back, Dave, right to the early
Yeah.
to your reggae roots there.
Yeah,
with the Hooters?
I just love it. I love that stuff. Even today, wherever I get a chance to play any kind of reggae stuff, I'm in. I mean, I just love when I get anything like that. Sam, that's beautiful, man.
Well,
Really
thanks. Well,
good.
you guys, the Hooters, you guys always had that tinge of
Yeah.
reggae thing happening.
Yeah,
You guys are all big fans of that.
Yeah, Rob was had the most amazing record collection when we first met. I remember when I go to his apartment and he turned me on to Linton Kwesi Johnson, and we played with Steel Pulse, and we would do gigs with we played with Jimmy Cliff, and I was always into the Barrett Brothers, and so I always paid attention to those guys. And of course, when I was coming up, Stuart Copeland, obviously he was listening to that stuff too, and he was like such a influence on a lot of music that was going on at the time. It was just something you hear and you go, wow, it's so organic and felt so great and fun to play. So
Yeah.
great.
He was such a pioneer with that, and just the way he figured out how to meld it all together into a pop sensibility.
Yeah.
Which is, nobody plays like him.
No.
You right away you go, that's Stewart.
Yeah.
That's him.
Yeah. I love that fact that
Such a
they.
great thing.
I saw this little clip of him and Sting together, and they're kind of ribbing each other about like Sting, because Sting would always, because I don't think they ever cut any of that stuff to a click track, and Sting was always like meticulous about like, I just want to feel it a certain way, and Stewart was like always edgy, like wanted this edge, and they kind of look, and he always played too loud, it was like they were busting on each other. But as a drummer, and you listen to what the way Stewart played, no one played like that, and musically he just moved you as a listener. I don't care if you played drums or just listening. He just knew how to make it feel, and whether it wasn't perfect on the grid didn't matter. I mean, listen, there's a lot of guys that are like, I gotta pluck it right on there. But I always say to them, go listen to Roxanne, or listen to some of that stuff, or even other music, a Honky Tonk Woman, where it's like he starts at one tempo and at the end he's like, but it's still fantastic. It's music.
Yeah, well, people need to start listening more with their ears instead of their eyes.
Yeah.
They play something, they go, oh, it's great, and then they look at it on the screen, they go, well, it's not on the grid. It's like, so what?
Yeah, right.
If you're not having to lock into a pre-existing loop or something,
Yeah.
and it has just kind of a movement to it, it's great. I mean, and you want to be tight. Don't get me wrong.
I hear you.
The timing, and your timing's got to be good. But when you listen to those records that are
Right.
kind of moving around, Bonham moved all over the
All
place,
over the
but
place.
everybody moved with it, and it moved in a good way.
Yeah,
It wasn't
right.
like rushing and constantly getting faster. It's just kind of breathing.
Yeah.
And and Copeland, I saw their last gig at the Garden.
Yeah.
Sterling Campbell was playing with the Bees, and he invited me, and so he did his
Love
show,
Sterling.
and then we sat out there and watched them. And Stuart Copeland, the whole band was incredible.
Yeah.
It was just like, that was a real band, and the interaction and the combination of those three guys. But Stuart was tearing it up.
Yeah, and he played traditional grip too. He would hit that snare drum. It was like, you knew he had to play a lot to play like that, to get that kind of snap going with a traditional grip and flip it. You knew he always had sticks in his hands to be able to do that. That's a special art. To be able to do that right. So
Yeah,
it's
great
cool.
player.
We talked a lot about. We mentioned program, but you're such a great drummer too, Sam. You play drums like you're. I mean, you're really a drummer I admire. I love your playing. I love your feel, and I love one thing that I watch you say, Sam. You could be playing something so intense, and you look like you're like chill. You're relaxed, like Mickey. You're just got a thing that it's just like you just got it grooving. It's such a great thing to watch and experience as someone, as a fan. Love your playing, man.
well,
Beautiful playing.
I appreciate that. That's took me a long time to learn. The key to playing is relax. Like
Yeah.
if you see Ferroni play, you see Stephen Ferroni
Yeah,
play.
best.
He's almost asleep.
I know.
But
I know.
But running at 1,000 miles an hour.
Exactly.
I mean, he's just like so relaxed
Yeah.
and calm
Yeah.
and just laying it down. And
Yeah.
Mickey's the same
Yeah,
way.
yeah. I tell Rob, like, Rob, with some of the guys in my band who've been together forever, they're always like, they get juiced before a show. Nowadays, I don't know if I had this conversation, but I had it with Mickey. I don't know if I told you, but the Hooters, when we play live these days, about 80% is I'm running the SPD SX, and I'm playing to a click. I found out we were going to do that the day we were, a matter of fact, on tour. We started doing it on tour, Sam. So you, as a drummer, you know, like, oh, wait a minute. Like, and then when we first started, I was the only one that had to click. And then after the first gig, and I said, guys, if I'm going to do this, you need to do this, because I started hearing the bass way. Like, they're like, oh, I'll play with you. Oh, great. But listen, you need to hear, you know, what, or just a little variation. You need to kind of have an idea where we're going, at least a count off. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
Right.
I remember, you know, doing that, and these guys would be all pumped up. And I really noticed when, like, initially when we're going on stage, like, especially the first few songs, it's like, dude, man, you know, you just like sounded like you just had some espresso, you know, settle down. They're like,
Yeah,
and nowadays,
yeah,
like, I want to go to Zen World before I hit the stage, and it's no longer is it like, we're gonna kill it. It's like, I'm gonna go up there, you know. It's a mindset
Right.
you have to have, man. It's if you want to survive it, and you don't want anybody giving you the evil eye when you're playing, you know, you want it to be, you know, feeling right, and there's a certain reward to that too. You know, it took me a little while to get used to that, but now I'm fine with it and I like it. But I think you know what I'm talking about.
You know, click can be your best friend. It should
Yep.
be. It should be just be like another member of the band.
Exactly.
You know? And even, you know, you can all be on top of the click. You can all be behind the
Right.
click. It's kind of like a reference, you know, as long as you're not, you know, all over the click.
Yeah.
A bunch of
Very
different
good.
Places all
Yeah.
through the song. You know?
Very good. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So, before we wrap up, David said when he first introduced you to me at the start of the show, how you are Mr. You know your burgers.
He knows. New
So,
York City?
where's the best burger in New York City?
Oh, Raoul's by far.
I am so
Raoul's.
down with you, man. I agree. I can't wait.
I think I turned
Yes.
you on to that, didn't I, David?
Yeah.
And you know, they
Yeah.
only make like 12 a day.
How about that?
What? 12?
And
Wait,
they
12 a
They
day?
make 12 burgers a
That's
day.
it.
They only serve them at the bar. They have this beautiful old bar
Yeah.
with great. That Francis is the bartender
They're
there.
wonderful. Love it.
And you go in. You got to wait. You go out. You get there like a half an hour, 40 minutes
Yeah.
before they open at 5,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you got to wait in line and make sure, you know, because you want to be one of the first 12. And,
It's-
and so the first 9 people can sit at the bar, and then
Yeah.
another 3 more. Almost everybody orders the
Yeah.
burger. It's
Phenomenal.
outrageous.
Sam is so right, and the way it's served, it is just an experience. And I'm telling you, you've never had a better burger in your life. I agree, and I think since Sam's turned us on to it, when we go, it's usually a stop we make, but we have to make a reservation. You can't, you know, if you get in there and you're just showing up, you're very lucky. But Raoul's is the place, and thank you much, Sam. But Sam's turned me on to other places. I mean, that had a great burger. There was one other spot. What was that? I forget the name of the place, but it was the other place that you told us to go to that was very good. But Raoul's is tip top.
Was it Strip House?
No, it wasn't that one. But now I got to go there. Now I have to go there, Sam.
Oh, Strip House, and they have a great steak too. That's probably my favorite steakhouse in New York.
Wow.
That one's good. But there's a bunch of great burger joints. But you know, any place that's just Raoul's for me.
I just love that you had that answer. Boom! Right off the bat, you didn't have to think about it. It was just, you know, I didn't, because I was afraid I was putting you on the spot, and you were boom, gave us the answer. That's great.
Sam, I can't tell you how much it meant to me that you could come on. We miss hanging with you. I miss the fact that none of us can really get out and play. But I think hopefully I'm optimistic about getting on with our lives in the next few months, and you know, we hope to see you. And it was a true, so much fun just chatting about, you know, all the great things you've done over your career, and it was a blast.
Right. We didn't get into a lot of it. Go on Sammy's website, SammyMerendino.com, and you can see all the people he's played with, see some of the work he's done. And then I guess the next thing coming up for you is, as you said, Diana, the musical will be premiering on Netflix soon, right?
Right. That'll be in March.
Okay.
That'll be in March, and hopefully we'll be opening up in summer or fall, reopening the show.
All right. And then once everything touring comes back, are you going to be back on the road with Cindy at some point in the future? Or?
I don't know. She may call me. You know, I've been on and off with her for past 20 years. If she calls me again, I'd probably do it again because
it's the music.
It's one of my favorite. You know, the band is good, but you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah. We don't know.
Open to all of it.
Exactly. Sam, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. All right, bud.
All right. Thank you both for having me, and be safe.
You too, Sammy. Thank you so much.
All right, bud. What a pleasure.
Yeah, that was great, Dave. I mean, your fellow drummers out in the world, the experiences they've had, the stories are great, and
he's such a class act, man. Such a good guy. He's nice to see because he's also authentic, and it's nice to be around in this business because he's experienced the ups and downs of it. He's had a great career. And he still gets some great things coming to him, and I admire him so much.
Yeah, I mean, a great life. Grows up in Ohio playing drums, and next thing you know, all these years later, he's on Broadway, and all the people he's played with.
Good to have friends like that.
Yeah, very cool. And it all didn't all start, but little moments like he walks into the bar and the guys are sitting next to him needing a drum programmer, I
love stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Great podcast today, bud.
It was. We didn't get into the Eagles situation, but that's.
Oh yeah, they fired him.
Whether or not you should have fired Doug, but the Jeffrey Lurie's press conference is the thing that blows me away. What the hell?
I mean, he should have gotten out of there real quickly. He just didn't know when to shut up.
I mean, I guess Howie's done nothing wrong. It's Howie's the perfect general manager. I mean, what? And we got 6 general managers on this team, or 6 guys who could be general managers on any team. I don't know if they've got any general managers on their team right now in the organization.
They sure need to figure out how to evaluate talent, because that last draft, I remember. Look, maybe
last draft. How about the last 5 drafts?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, every time I watch Metcalf, and I think about Arcega-Whiteside and Metcalf, the fact that we didn't take Metcalf, and the one that really gets me is Jefferson, because watching his dad play, I knew that he was going to be a winner. But there's so many players.
Well, all right. I just needed to get that off my chest.
I'm glad you did. I mean, but we got the Sixers and Simmons.
That's a whole other story. Yeah. Two friggin' shots. Two friggin' shots against a G League team on the other side, and he takes 2 shots. Anyway, all right. Enough sports. We don't want to ruin the mood of the great vibe of the interview with Sammy. It
was wonderful, Sam Merendino, man.
Yes, thank you so much to Sammy. Thank you to our sponsors, Croker Percussion and the School of Rock Mainline in Pennsylvania. Thank you to Taylor, doing a great job as always, and Wildfire Radio. For Dave, I'm Andy, and we'll see you next time on In the Pocket.